Hello, my name is Andy Acho, and I am an American of Chaldean descent, a Chaldean American. My purpose in addressing you today is to provide you with some information about the history, the religion, and the customs of the Chaldeans, a nationality with a long, rich heritage that came from an area of the world which many believe to have been the biblical Garden of Eden. Chaldeans are so called because they are descendants of the inhabitants of Chaldea, an ancient country with an interesting and rich history. Chaldean history can be traced back more than 4,000 years to an ancient land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, referred to by the Greeks as Mesopotamia, which means land between the two rivers, to a land which is one of the richest in the world in history, to a land where humanity knew settled agriculture for the first time and came to be called the cradle of civilization. It is where writing first began. It is where the wheel was first invented by the Chaldeans and the Assyrians. Ur of the Chaldees, or Chaldea, served as the capital for 3 Sumerian dynasties and reached its peak under Ur-Nammu at about 2100 BC. He is the king who developed and legislated the oldest set of laws, preceding Hammurabi's code by 3 centuries. About 1800 BC, Semites and Sumerians were brought under the rule of Hammurabi, the lawgiver, a Semitic king who established his capital in Babylon. Hammurabi's code of laws are the oldest still in existence. The Babylon Empire was succeeded by the Assyrian Empire about 1400 BC. The Assyrians were skilled hunters and fighters and were among the first to use horses. The Chaldeans came back to power in 625 BC and were at their peak about 600 BC when the Chaldean Empire under King Nebuchadnezzar ruled in Babylon. King Nebuchadnezzar ruled for 43 years from 605 to 562 BC. The end of the Chaldean Empire is said to have been in 538 BC. The Chaldeans ruled an area now made up of all or part of Iraq, Iran, Egypt, Turkey, Arabia, Syria, and Palestine, including Jerusalem. This was the time of the fall of Jerusalem and their Babylonian captivity. The Jews were under Chaldean domination and are known to have spoken Aramaic or Chaldean at least up until the time of Christ. Babylon is especially remembered for its Hanging Gardens, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, built by the Chaldean king Nebuchadnezzar for his queen. Chaldeans were replaced in power by the Persians, beginning with Cyrus the Great in 538 BC. The Persians in turn were defeated by Alexander the Great in 332 BC, who ruled over the vast empire during his reign. Various dynasties then dominated the area up until the Arab conquest of Mesopotamia in 637 AD, 5 years after the death of the Muslim prophet Muhammad. While 637 AD was a long time ago, you can see that compared to 2000 and 3000 BC, Arab domination of the region could be considered somewhat recent. The Chaldeans that existed at that time were driven, for the most part, to the northern part of Iraq, near Mosul or Nineveh. Most lived in Tilkef or Tilkepeth rather than Baghdad. They maintained their Christian religion in their distinct Chaldean or Aramaic language spoken by Jesus Christ. Just as the German occupation of Poland during World War II didn't make the Polish people Germans, similarly, the Arab occupation and domination of Iraq didn't make the Chaldeans Arab. Chaldeans are not Arab. That doesn't make the Chaldeans better or worse, just different. Incidentally, the Chaldeans of today still speak the Aramaic or Chaldean language. That Aramaic language is the mother tongue from which Hebrew and Arabic were later derived. Baghdad, which is now the capital of Iraq, and Tilkef, the farming community in northern Iraq, is where most of the present-day Chaldeans in America came from. Chaldeans began leaving their native land early in this century for two primary reasons, religious and financial. Being Catholic and worshiping Jesus Christ, a Jew, was not very popular in the Middle East in the early part of this century. Religious freedom was not prevalent. Financially, most Chaldeans did not do well in Iraq. They were extremely poor and sought a better life. Chaldeans ended up in America as they sought a country where they could do better through hard work. Some went to Mexico and Canada initially and ended up in Detroit when the word spread that a Henry Ford was paying his workers at Ford Motor Company $5 a day to work in an automobile factory. This is exactly how my Uncle Joe and other immigrants ultimately landed in Detroit. He never qualified to work for Ford, but he stayed here and became a successful businessman and a contributing member of the American society. Men that left Iraq and came here were separated from their family for years until they settled down and could send for them. After waiting 19 years to get a visa, for instance, my father came to America, worked for 2 years at 100 hours a week to save enough money for tickets, and then sent for my mother, myself, my brothers and sister, and he was not an exception. That was the rule. Keep in mind, while none of us had any control over where we were born, some of us chose what country we became citizens of. We are Americans by choice and proud of it. This is very prevalent. Chaldeans are proud to be Americans. When the first Chaldeans migrated to the United States, they were much like all other ethnic people who came to America. Most were unable to read, write, or speak the language. Many were unable to get jobs and therefore had little choice but to open their own businesses if they wanted to provide for their families. They selected the grocery business because they believed that food was the essence of survival. A few early immigrants bought a small grocery store from a Syrian friend. Being hard workers and dedicated to their jobs, they soon succeeded in their new enterprise. As they prospered, they brought their relatives to this country and put them to work in their stores. As the relatives learned the business, they became independent merchants, and so it went. It is a custom of our people to help each other. Usually they borrowed money from as many as 20 people on a personal loan basis and payable whenever they had it. The biggest single factor that contributed to their success was their determination to make good through hard work and a sense of responsibility to their creditors. A 12-hour per day, 7-day work week schedule was not unusual. The greatest influx of Chaldean immigrants occurred in the 1960s and 1970s when the immigration quotas were reformed. Since many grocery chain stores had pulled out of the Detroit area after the 1967 riots, it has been the Chaldeans, in large part, who have provided the neighborhood food shopping facilities, jobs, and services to many inner-city residents. Chaldean businessmen are actively participating in positive interaction programs with their customers and neighbors, contributing to soup kitchens, youth programs, and area churches. Diversification in areas outside of the retail food business was almost non-existent until the last 25 years. Today, while the majority of the Chaldeans are entrepreneurs, having about 1,500 stores, there are quite a few of us working outside of the food industry. There are Chaldean doctors, lawyers, accountants, engineers, real estate brokers, insurance agents, travel agents, communicators, journalists, educators, and even corporate international business strategists. Like other groups who have immigrated to the U.S., Chaldeans have successfully assimilated and are part of the multinational melting pot that makes America great. Chaldeans now have taken great interest in education, and to encourage even greater excellence and achievement in education, the Chaldean Federation of America, the umbrella organization for the community, holds annual graduation and scholarship award exercises for the several hundred graduates from U.S. high schools, colleges, universities, and graduate schools. Despite the fact that present-day Chaldeans are from what is now an Arab country, dominated by Muslims, Chaldeans are all Catholic. They belong to the Chaldean rite of the Roman Catholic Church. They were converted to Christianity by St. Thomas the Apostle and his disciples. In the United States, there are presently 4 Chaldean parishes in the Detroit area, 4 parishes in California, and 2 Chaldean parishes in Chicago to serve the more than 75,000 Chaldeans in the United States, 60,000 in Detroit, and approximately 15,000 in California, and the rest in Illinois and other states. These American Chaldean parishes have been organized into a diocese entrusted to the care of the Most Reverend Mar Ibrahim, who has been appointed by the Pope to oversee this diocese since 1982. The Chaldeans are proud of the Chaldean link to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Not many people know this about Abraham, mentioned frequently in the Bible, and estimated to have been around about 1850 BC. He is a descendant of the Chaldeans. He was from Ur of the Chaldees, that's what it said in the Bible, the city of the Chaldeans. Based on several years of personal research, I have come to the conclusion that Chaldeans, through Abraham, have a historical link to the 3 major religions of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, the religions practiced by the Christians, Jews, and Muslims. Let's review the historical connections. By his wife Sarah, Abraham had a son, Isaac. Isaac was followed by his son Jacob, who changed his name to Israel. Jacob had 12 sons, which led to the formation of the 12 tribes of Israel. From one of the tribes, Levi, came Moses, the great leader and lawgiver of the Hebrews and father of Judaism. From the tribe of Judah, eventually, more than 1,000 years later, came Jesus Christ and Christianity. By his Egyptian handmaiden Hagar, Abraham had another son, Ishmael. Ishmael's son was Kedar, or Khadar, who was the founder of the Arab tribes. A most famous descendant was Muhammad, who was born in 570 AD and died in 632 AD. Muhammad was the founder of Islam, the religion practiced by the Muslims. Now a few words about the customs of the Chaldeans. The vast majority of all Chaldeans, as mentioned, originated from the village of Tilkepe and several other northern villages, as well as Baghdad. They were primarily farmers, and they lived in extended families. Women married at a very young age. My mother, for instance, was married at the age of 12. Men were generally 10 to 15 years older. Extended family members lived together under the father's roof as one household, being a patriarchal society. Youngsters grew up in a multi-generation family surrounded by grandparents, uncles, aunts, and cousins. The women followed the traditional roles of wives and mothers. They were the heart and nurturers of the family. Children were given a sense of responsibility toward each other and taught to show much respect and honor to their elders. Traditionally, Chaldean parents emphasized the values of morality, integrity, a hard work ethic, and strong family ties. I won't pretend to have been capable of adequately covering 4,000 years of history, culture, religion, and customs in such a short period of time. But I hope that I have provided you some information to have you appreciate a little bit about the minority group of Americans whose roots are in the Middle East, the Chaldeans. Thank you very much for watching.